So something happened where the Bee Gees got in some contractual dispute and they left the movie. They left. Now they're ready to go into production. This is a big movie, man. This is a sequel to Saturday Night Fever, and they have no Bee Gees. So they called up Billy Joel, they called up Daryl Hall and Oates, and everyone they didn't want to do it. So my brother calls me, and I knew by tone of his voice he wanted something. Hey, brother, how are you? I said, I'm not doing that good. I mean, I'm always. He goes, remember all the songs you wrote? I go, yes, I do remember them. You rejected every one. He goes, yeah, but we got a problem with the Bee Gees and blah, blah. I said, so he said, yeah, why don't you come around? So this is what happened. I'll never forget it. Everyone was kind of depressed and panicked because, they got millions of dollars invested in this movie and they have no music and they're ready to shoot. So he goes, listen, I'm going to have lunch at Travolta's. I want you to come along. Bring that cassette, but don't say anything. Don't say it's you or anything like this. So we're sitting there. Travolta's here, my brother's here, and I'm in the middle. And it's now when I think back, it's kind of comical. It's like Barbarino from Welcome Back, Kotter meets Rocky. And they're talking, yeah, how I feel. Yeah. So Travolta's going back and forth. So there's this Sony cassette player, kind of like a boombox at that time. And Sly goes, yeah, I found this music. Listen to this stuff. So he plays Far From Over. And John's eating going, wow, very good. Then he plays Never Gonna Give You Up. Wow, man. Then he plays Moody Girl. Then he plays all these songs. John's there, wow, man, that's really good. Who is that? He goes, it's my brother Frank. And it was almost like he looked at me like Fredo from Godfather, like, Frank is singing and wrote all this. He goes, yeah. And then they said, so then I get a message from my manager. He goes, well, they're dropping Far From Over in as the opening song to Staying Alive. I go, what? Are you kidding me? I was broke. I was, I thought my career was over. And I go, my God. Then a few days later, yeah, they really like Moody Girl. They're putting that in. I go, what? I'm like hallucinating. I mean, living in a dumpy apartment. He goes, yeah, they love Never Gonna Give You Up. I said, really? Then they play Once More, Never Again, Finding Out the Hard Way. They start adding all my songs in there and some of the instrumental stuff I wrote. I'm freaking out. And they're saying, well, yeah, here's a check. There's like $4,000 for this song. I never saw $4,000 in my life. Stabs, bump, bump. Of course, they ripped me off for my publishing, to go, well, if you don't want to sign this, 100% of my publishing, that's where you make your money, and who cares? I mean, they'll found someone else maybe. Well, make a long story short, I ended up with 9 songs in Staying Alive, me singing them, me performing them. And the next year I'm nominated for a Golden Globe and a Grammy. I mean, it's almost like a Rocky story in a way, from nowhere. Talk about underdog. And then, now it was the same 5 songs. So when all the award period came out, there were 5 songs that were nominated. Everything for the Golden Globes, Grammy. It was Far From Over, Maniac from Flashdance, What a Feeling from Flashdance, a song from Tender Mercies that no one ever heard hardly, and a song from Yentl with Barbra Streisand. Same songs, Golden Globes, Grammys, same. That's it. Those were only songs. So I'm doing my first photo shoot for my first album. Now this is like a year later almost, after it's a #1 hit in some countries and things like that. And that day they're announcing the Academy Awards. Well, I figure I'm going to get nominated. There's only 5 songs. There's no other songs. So the guy goes, hey, your brother's calling. And I'm in the middle of the photo shoot. I think I'm taking a break. I'm really excited, whether I win or not, to be nominated for Academy Award, like 2 brothers nominated for Academy Awards. So my brother gets on the phone and goes, brother. I go, yeah. I figured, what happened? Someone die? He goes, you didn't get nominated. I go, what do you mean I didn't get nominated? It's the #1 record. There's only 5 songs. He goes, well, they took my song out and put another song in from Yentl, which is more obscure. I think Yentl went to 95 with an anchor. I said, they took my song out and put another Barbra Streisand song in? I was crestfallen. I go, let's talk about political. I mean, man, I was so bummed. Not that I was going to win the Academy Award, because Michael Cimbella was a friend of mine who did Maniac. And I went, wow, this is how Hollywood works. And then I said, Sly lost his Oscar for Best Actor in Rocky, which he should have won. And I said, well, that's how it works. Okay. It was so weird. And, and things happen like that. There's no guarantees or promises in show business or music business, they're just not.
It's a tough lesson. Even I try to tell my kids that, because they're young, 13, 11, 9. But I try to
Yeah.
teach them that it's not always the person that deserves it that gets the award. It's not always the right thing that happens. Unfortunately,
No.
it's just the way it is.
A lot of politics.
Yep.
A lot of
Inside,
politics.
there's always an inside deal.
I know. And I tell, I do these, not seminars, but, sometimes online, acting classes, music, and kind of mentor. And I just say, listen, if you want to go in this line of work, you better have a thick skin. I started at 15. I didn't have my first hit record till I was 33. That's a long time. It's 18 years of playing dives and dumps, getting no respect, getting dropped from record deals. I said, but if you don't have a thick skin, the chances of you making it are like slim and none. There's 2% of the people in Screen Actors Guild work, even as an extra work. Forget starring in a movie. So, and I tell people, I said, you know what? I mean it. I know it sounds weird. Don't quit your day job. Because if you think you're going to come to this town and you're going to light it on fire, you are sadly mistaken. It doesn't work that way. It's luck. It's timing, who the right place at the right time. So, but that staying alive started my movie career. I mean, I did a thing with Linda Carter special. She loved Take You Back. I sang Take You Back with Linda Carter. I couldn't take my eyes off her. I was like, wow, I'm sitting there singing with Linda Carter. She's singing Take You Back. And I did, but when Rocky came out, I did all the shows. I did Midnight Special. I did Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas, Jim Neighbors. I did all the shows. I mean, but then I realized, and then I learned, I said, my brother's celebrity cast a big shadow. And the only reason, and I thought my music was really good, the only reason I was really on those shows was because of, Rocky. Because they didn't really care about me. All they did was talk about Rocky. What's it like being Rocky's brother? Would you do this? And then right after Rocky had its run, everything got dropped from the label. The group broke up and everything. And then I just said, okay, this is where it's at. I'm not going to eclipse his career. Even though we both kind of made it at the same time. I don't care who it is. You could have been the Rolling Stones. If your brother was like Sylvester, you're still going to get it. It was just an avalanche. It was just some perfect storm. And then at the point I said, well, I was never mad at him. I was never like envious or jealous. I just wanted to do what I did. So from that point on, I said, you know what? I'm proud of my brother. I'm proud of what we've done together. And then when that ended, then I started getting movie parts. I was always a ham anyway. So it was kind of a natural thing to go into movies. And to this day, I've done 99 movies. I mean, I was considered for Academy Award for Barfly. I mean, I was in Tombstone, Hudson Hawk. So I've done big movies and crappy movies. I mean, that's just the way it is. Not every movie is going to be a hit. But I did some cool movies, and then I worked with some great actors, Val Kilmer, Mickey Rourke, Dennis Hopper, Faye Dunaway. So I learned to be grateful and practice gratitude and say, you know what? I don't have the biggest house in Hollywood, far from it. I've lived in my house for 40 years. That gives you an example. My health is good other than this stupid cough. And, I've won some awards here and there. I got gold records and stuff like that. But I'm doing better than most that never got a shot. That's what Rocky's about, never getting a shot. At least I've had some shots, and I'm still working. I'm still doing movies. I still do concerts. But the good Lord took care of me because I'm healthy. I'll be 76 years old in July. Sly will be 80, which is really weird. I mean, we think about it. I mean, when I go to doctors, they say, write down your age. It's like an out-of-body experience. I go, that can't be me. Because I feel exactly the same. That's kind of same height, but the age is just not, working. You know what I mean? But then you figure people that, never got a shot and probably worked and dreamed as much as I did, but it just didn't happen for them. And so if people think this is an easy business, it's not. Because there's many actors that were very big and can't get arrested, can't get forgotten. Guys that were on hit series for 5, 6, 7 years, and then after series goes. So I always told people, I said, save your money. Don't live too high on the hog. Just live to do whatever you want to do when you want to do it. If you want to sit there and go out and buy a Rolls Royce or a Maybach, be my guest. If you want to be and end up buying stupid jewelry, get married and divorced a few times, be my guest. But that money goes. When money's not coming in, it goes. Thankfully, I've never been married by choice. I mean, my brother goes, "You're too surly to be married. Yeah, you're not the marrying kind of guy, you know." And I said, "Well, it's true. You know, I always had an eye for the ladies when I was a young buck. So it was just like, you know, I just never wanted to be married. I was married to my career."
Let's be honest. It would be, you would deprive so many women of you. You should never guarantee. It'd be terrible for the women.
I'm a Renaissance guy, so there's enough to go around, you know. But the thing is, I never regretted it because my whole life, all I wanted to do is be a singer and guitar player. That's it. I mean, I didn't really date as a teenager. I was kind of, you know, in those days, you know, wearing a pea coat, long hair. We were a little weirdo. I mean, the girls were looking for the football players. So a funny thing is they were doing a documentary, and I went back to 40th high school reunion. I didn't even graduate from that school, but it was Lincoln High. Yeah, Northeast Philadelphia. So I go there, and I was, man, I got to tell you, I forget what year it was, but I was ripped. I mean, I was shredded, man. I was in best shape. My arms, I mean, I was ripped. So I go with my best friend who just passed away, my childhood friend, Greg. I said, this can be weird. It was 1969 graduation class. I should have graduated in 68, but believe it or not, only I could flunk first grade, but I did. So, and I went in, Vinny, they had name tags. I didn't know who any of these people were. You know, I went to high school with them. Like the hottest looking girls, they look like my grandmother. And I'm coming in, man, my waist is like 30. I'm like ripped. And some of the guys were cool, but the guys I thought were like really cool looking, big, they were like short, like, you know, they didn't even look. And a few people said, Mr. Hollywood. Yeah. I said, listen, man, I took my shot. I went into the wild, man. You guys, you know, decide to stay home, marry your girlfriend, high school sweetheart, whatever. But you can't knock me. I went into the jungle, man. I went for it. I had no guarantees. I only graduated high school. So I wasn't equipped to do any job, Vinny. I mean, really. I mean, I could have worked in a stable or something. So other than music, I was not equipped to be a business person or anything like that. So I was flying by the seat of my pants most of my life. And then I had success later in life. I mean, most rock stars are like the Beatles. They're big at 22, 23 years old. I was 33 years old. That was ancient for that time. It was good. But it was interesting to see how life changes. Like, you know, the high school looks smaller and everything. People look smaller than you thought. Girls that wasn't that good looking is like really good looking for her age. It's just like a whole twist. Like the guys that were the nerds no one paid attention are successful business guys, you know, living in Florida now and things like that. So that was kind of a wake-up call. It was kind of interesting.
Without one thing that was on my mind that I wanted to ask you too is, I don't know what year you went out to LA, but were you able to catch a little bit of that Laurel Canyon kind of vibe? And how was that in contrast to Philly vibe?
I came out, well, the first time I came out, I was 75 to visit my brother while he was filming Rocky. I hadn't come out yet. And I'd never been to California. And then I moved here in November of 79. I moved here permanently. And it doesn't even resemble the California I went to. It was still like the beautiful people, the hot looking California girls, people dressed nice and stuff like that. And it was like, you know, I've met a bunch of guys out here. We'd go to parties. We were like that movie Swingers, like the five guys, you go to one party in Hollywood. We didn't have a pot to piss in, actually. But, you know, we were like, you know, young, halfway decent looking guys. And all the actresses were like 25, 24, like beautiful girls that came from the Midwest or wherever. So it was like swingers. Hey, man, look at that girl. And everyone wanted to be an actress. The girls, I'm a model, actress, whatever. And I said, well, the whatever is what's scary. Model, actress, but the whatever is kind of like a gray area here. And it was kind of really fun. It wasn't like violent. It wasn't dirty. I mean, Beverly Hills, I don't even go in Beverly Hills anymore. It's like, it's horrible. and places that we used to roam around. How it was different from Philadelphia? Well, Philly was an urban city, but it wasn't dirty when I was a kid. I mean, Chestnut Street, before they blocked it off, that was the hub, man. That was like where Music City, everybody, famous person, musician, you stop off at Music City or 8th Street Music. And it was filled with head shops, all these kids walking around wearing like giant bell bottoms and stuff. It was really cool. I mean, I had no fear of getting on the 66 bus, going down the Frankfurt Bridge and taking the L downtown. Never didn't even think about it. And it was really interesting. It was fun. I mean, I had a soft spot in it because, that's where I started my musical career. And, my mom and dad, lived up on Mauer Street in Northeast Philly. And it was nice. So I've been out here more than half my life. And now this place is becoming unlivable. Yeah. I mean, it's unlivable. I mean, the prices are so... We pay like $2.50 more gas than you guys do.
Yep. It's about $4.20 a gallon here.
No, it's like 80 here. And it's like, and I said the dream is like gone. So like you said in Philly, this place is just reeking with fraud. And I did a post today on my Instagram, which my Instagram is Frank, very hard to find, Frank.Stallone. And I said, well, you know what? If this repeats itself, I'm either going to the Sunshine State or Charleston, South Carolina. I mean, and I don't know if the damage is so bad that even in my lifetime, if it could be put back together, but it would have to be radical because there's so much. Well, you read it in the news. There's fraud. There's $22 billion missing. No one knows where it is. Fighting homelessness. Well, first of all, they shouldn't be on the street anyway. I mean, you go downtown, you got to walk over garbage. I drove downtown, and I've lived in some bad neighborhoods, but I was never like afraid. They were just, poor neighborhoods. I mean, it looked like Escape from New York. Seriously. I mean, trash piled 4 feet high, people like living in boxes and tents. And you think about California. Well, when you were a kid, you think of California was one of the biggest destination states in the whole union. Everyone wanted to go to California. You got the beaches, you got the mountains, you could ski, great fishing, all that stuff. And a lot of it's disappeared. It's like Night of the Living Dead. It's really sad. So
I agree with you, Frank, because I remember I moved out to LA back in 2000, the very beginning of 2008. And I used to work at Il Fornaio in Beverly Hills.
I know Il Fornaio very well.
And I think I've seen you a couple. I know, I heard. I think I see a few times outside of Cafe Roma. Everybody used to go to Cafe Roma.
I go there all Saturday. Yeah.
Ironically, they hired me when I first went there. The first day I was in LA, the first day I went to Beverly Hills, I went to El Fornaio, I got a job. I went to Cafe Roma, and the guy Giovanni over there hired me on the spot. He was Calabrese too. He liked I was speaking to him Italian, and so I got hired both places. So I had to choose one. I decided El Fornaio, but I probably should have chosen.
Cafe Roma had the best looking girls.
Yeah.
In the 80s, man, on Saturdays, that place was packed. All the young starlets, and we were young guys. Mickey Rourke was there every Saturday, and it was really fun. People dressed nice. Yeah, El Fornaio. I remember it. It just closed because Beverly Hills is turning into a wasteland. No one goes there. I mean, no one, because, there's been daytime robberies, there's fights, there's, it's like, whoa, what's going on here? Yeah.
It's a shame.
Just closed. I think it was open when I moved here in 79. I think it was older than that. So, I mean, it was there for like 40 some years. And Cafe Roma closed.
I was going to ask you. I wasn't sure. I heard something that they closed, but they reopened. But I wasn't really sure if they closed.
Like a French restaurant now, but it doesn't matter. No one goes.
You still got Il Pastaio. You still have Il Pastaio. You still have.
Yeah, Via Loro. That's where I was last week with Joe Cortese and John Roast Beef, and so I have just my group of friends. We'll either go to Dan Tana's or we'll go to El Pastaio or their other restaurant, Via Loro. And so you just have, like my friends, Joe Cortese, James Russo, Johnny Roast Beef, just the Italian guys. We go out and we have a lot of fun. Yeah, we
have a Musso and Frank's. Is that any good?
Yeah, I don't go. That's in Hollywood. I don't even go near there. That's like That opened the year my father was born, 1919, God rest his soul. But it's a great old landmark theater, but you got to go through all the muck to get there. I don't
Yeah.
go to Hollywood. I don't go past La Brea Boulevard. That's it. And that's even pushing it. I don't go past La Cienega Boulevard. I basically, stay in my own little tract. I'm a competitive shooter, so I go to the range and shoot trap and stuff like that. But I just, you kind of like-minded friends, like-minded people, I mean, I knew Frank Sinatra. That's a whole funny story in that one. That's like that movie, My Favorite Year, with Frank Sinatra. I remember that's the only one, and I've met so many famous people. Gene Kelly, Cary Grant. I've met them all, not like personal, but, enough to talk and this. And I remember the first time saw Frank Sinatra. I saw him the first time at the Golden Nugget with my brother and a few people, because my brother knew the owner at that time, Cliff Perlman. It was like, I said, I can't believe this. I've seen this guy my whole life. It was the Elvis and Beatles and then Frank Sinatra, that thing. And being an Italian, it's like, whoa. Okay. And I was sitting there at the Golden Nugget. We had a booth. No, Caesar's Palace. I'm sorry. And he came on stage. It was like, are you kidding me, man? This is Frank Sinatra. Time went by, and then he was playing at a place, one of the Cerritos Theater outdoor thing. And John Stamos was there, and I've known John. At that time, for a minute, Frank Sinatra and I had the same manager. Well, I had his manager, Elliot Weissman. And he loved my new album I did with Billy May, and he was real excited about handling me and stuff. So I drove with him, Frank's manager, to the gig. And here he comes. Frank Sinatra comes out of his trailer, just kind of hanging there. And I'm there, and I swear to God. And John Stamos was there, and he got a picture. I said, John, would you take a picture with me and Frank Sinatra? So I walk up to Frank Sinatra. I go, hello, Mr. Sinatra. My name's Frank Stallone. Would you mind if I get a picture with you? He goes, yeah, come on, son. And I have this picture of Frank Sinatra. And I was actually tongue-tied. Oh my God, the blue eyes. It's Frank, that face you've seen your whole life. So that was the only time I was like, smitten when I met Frank Sinatra. It's weird.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's one guy I wish I always met. I met a lot of great people, but I think he died in '96. I think it was around that time.
Yeah, I remember his funeral procession went right by my house. I was standing on the corner of Santa Monica Boulevard because his not ceremony, but his thing was at Good Shepherd Church.
Good Shepherd, yeah. Beverly Hills.
Yeah. And I'm standing there. In those days, I smoked. And I had like a drink in my hand. I'm standing on the corner. I go, wow, that's Frank Sinatra in the hearse going by right by my house. And it was weird. It was a strange thing because, it's someone like you. It's been part of your life, your whole life, Frank Sinatra. I mean, who didn't play Frank Sinatra in their house? You know what I mean? So
some of those memories too, like growing up, and again, like I have a lot of memories from the early '80s and stuff. And all those old timers were still in the neighborhood. People that came over from Italy, people that didn't even speak English, and everybody. It was that whole atmosphere of listening to the Sinatra, listening to Tony Bennett, and all these classic Italian artists, and those people are irreplaceable. I don't think people of this generation can ever understand the type of people that were around back then.
No,
those type of.
Met Dean Martin. I saw him. Sammy Davis was a friend. But that era is gone because now all these guys sit home with their computer and Pro Tools and make a record. You just steal a rhythm and play a record. These guys were guys that, played on the road. I was friends with Frankie Lane, Bennett. Jerry Vale used to go to Cafe Roma every Saturday with his wife. Al Martino I did a gig with, stuff like that. But you'll never see that again. It's like blues guys. You'll never see guys like Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and B.B. King and Freddie. It's gone. They came from an era where they really came from the South. They were real blues guys. We just imitate it, because we like it. No, I like playing blues guitar because I have ADD and PTSD, so I can't remember shit. So if blues is great, I just make up stuff as I go along. In other words, I can't play anything really structured. I was always in envy of guys that could listen to a record and play the licks on the Beatles perfect. I couldn't do it. I just might lose my train of thought. But so I do the best I can. But yeah, you'll never see that again. You'll never see anything like the Beatles ever again. Not that wrote those kinds of songs or the Rolling Stones. I mean, if you think about music, Who do you have out there that's like really ballsy, like Led Zeppelin or the Who or the Kinks or the Stones? I think, the last of that, probably that hard rock, was probably the Allman Brothers, Tom Petty, and Aerosmith. But if you look at the groups now, it's all like a production number. Like when I was a kid, they'd be laughed off stage. Guys dancing with girls in the back with all these lights. That's an act you would see at the Latin Casino, not like at a rock. You know what I mean? So that's another club I never went to, the Latin Casino.
Yeah, I heard of it. It was a little bit before my time.
Cherry Hill, yeah, but that, you name it, they played there, from Dean Martin to Frank Sinatra. They all played those places. And so I caught the tail end of that stuff.
Palumbo's, which you mentioned earlier, which unfortunately burned down. I think it was in '93. That was my first job. I was a busboy. I was like, I don't even know if I was 13 or 14, but and that place was huge. It was beautiful, and everybody sang there. Before Atlantic City, Palumbo's was the spot. Everybody would go to Palumbo's.
Davis, they all sang there, or they sang at that place in Jersey, the 51 Club or something, like Skinny.
The 500 Club, maybe, or something.
500 Club. Yeah, they all played. Well, they didn't play stadiums in those days, And I remember I went to Palumbo's. God, it had to be 1961, and I was there with my stepfather. And my stepfather grew up on Mifflin Street,
Really?
South. Yeah, and Juniper Street. Yeah, and I remember couldn't take my eyes off the drum set. Couldn't take my eyes off the guys playing in the band, and it was really cool. Heavy Italian, man. Big time Italian. And my stepfather was good friends with Frank Palumbo and his wife, Kippy, who was an actress. He did movies in the 40s. And I remember that it was really cool. And I remember I had a wallet. My father, I guess they sold, and it was a black, like one of these fold in half wallets, and it said CR Club, which CR Club was kind of the annex to Palumbo's. Okay. And then, all those great restaurants like Bookbinders.
Yep. I worked there.
Did you really? You were
I
worked
Wow. I worked at all the neighborhood places. I worked at Palumbo's, Dante and Luigi's, Ralph's. I worked at all those places. And then I worked at Bookbinders, Four Seasons, the Ritz Carlton. I worked at.
God, did you ever work at Cuz's? I never was there.
It was renamed. So Cuz's closed down, and then it became Terrano's. And Terrano's was Terrano's, then it closed down and reopened. And I was there in the early mid '90s, right around the time Sinatra died, as a matter of fact. And I'm still friendly with the Martirano family, George Martirano, he's in
Florida, Steve Martirano.
That's Steve, yeah, that's his cousin, yeah.
Saloon's still there,
and the owner is in his 80s, and he's. I'll tell you, man, that place you cannot get a seat in there. And actually, Joe Cortese was there when he came.
I was never there.
Yeah.
When we were doing Rocky, I never went to Saloon. I remember we were at the Victor Cafe. That's where we did the movie, which is kind of an interesting place. The guy was an opera freak, and it was an old restaurant.
Yeah.
The Victor, yeah. And of course, it was named Adrian's in the movie. But yeah, I remember Philly had some great restaurants. And there was, Palumbo's, CR Club, but Bookbinders was famous for the lobster.
They had the largest lobster tanks in the world. And you used to have every president. Sinatra had his own table there. It was called the President's Room. It's still there. You could go there. It's a different, smaller now, but it was called the President's Room, and they had all pictures of all the presidents all over, and they had one picture like the Keystone over the archway, and it was Frank Sinatra.
Wow. Is it still there, Bookbinders?
Yeah, it's still there. Different owner. It's just limited to the bar area and the dining area. It's not used to seat like 500 people. Now it's smaller, but it's a shame. A lot of these places, Italian market's still good. Ville de Roma. There's still a lot of good little authentic places that are there still.
I remember I used to go to that when I lived in LA and I came back to Philadelphia. I remember I went to that club next to the Warwick, Second Story.
Yeah.
Remember that club up there? Yeah. And it was just different. But, it's wonderful to have memories of those places. I remember my mother and father went out and said, we lived in the Northeast, where we're going to go to Bookbinders, And I remember Joe Letizia was the local kind of legend knockaround guy. And Frank Fontaine was his Frank Fontaine was always Crazy Guggenheim on the Jackie Gleason show. I remember I did these shows with my band when I was 15, 16. One show, we had to get up at 4:30 in the morning. It was a farm report show called the Bill Bennett Show. And it was a rock band. This is like a farm show. We did that. And then we did a show called Aquarama. In South Philly, there was it was like kind of like a SeaWorld inside.
Yeah.
And we thought we were like, my God, we've made it, man. Local TV. Aquarama, the Bill Bennett Show. I mean, unless you were a farmer, you didn't see the Bill Bennett Show. It was like, you were getting farm reports at 4 in the morning, 5:30, 6 in the morning, And yeah, it was fun. I got to tell you, if someone asked me, what was more fun, the first part of your career or the second part? I would say the first part, because the innocence. I worked at Gino Marchetti's flipping hamburgers, in those days. And everything was so new. And all you had was life ahead of you. You're 15, so you could have 75 years ahead of you. So, you're filled with dreams, you're filled with expectations. And so it was fun. I mean, I talked to one of my guys that's still alive, and I had a group at that time called the American Tragedy. We won the Battle of the Bands, believe it or not.
Nice.
Yeah. Jay Cook was like the host, the DJ. And we were a good group. And I said, we have so much fun sitting there copying Beatles songs, loving Spoonful Stones. Because we're kids. We still lived at home.